They didn't know what they'd started. The Zarkath Imperium controlled 3 arms of the galaxy. No one challenged them, not the Silthari, not the Drecht, not any of the old powers. They had fleets the size of moons. They burned worlds for sport. When they stumbled across Earth, they thought it would be another easy conquest. They were wrong. When their first scout fleet entered Sol space, they blasted Europa's colonies without warning. 2,000 civilians dead in minutes. They bombarded Mars, turning the domes into craters. Then they reached Earth orbit. Captain Aaron Riker stood in Earth Defense Command's war room when the first reports came in. His knuckles were white against the console. "Civilians?" he asked through clenched teeth. "Thousands. They're not even targeting military sites," the intel officer said, voice shaking. "They're making an example." An example. The Zarkath broadcasted their message across all human frequencies. It played over every station, every screen, even hacked into military channels. The alien voice was cold, guttural. "You are not worthy. You will kneel or you will die. Your world belongs to the Imperium." Aaron watched the footage. The burning colonies, shattered stations, drifting corpses in orbit. His jaw tightened until it ached. These weren't soldiers. They were families, workers, scientists, unarmed, helpless. The president called an emergency war council. Generals debated surrender. Diplomats begged for talks. Aaron Riker stood. "They killed our people. They broadcast it for sport." His voice was low, but carried across the chamber. "You think they want peace? They want slaves. They want us dead." "Captain, we can't fight them," one general said. "Their technology—" Aaron cut him off. "We will fight." He pointed to the screen showing the Zarkath fleet in orbit. "You want war?" Aaron growled, staring straight into the holocamera that fed to Earth's emergency broadcast. "Then face annihilation." He transmitted it wide, across every frequency, across every channel, including the Zarkath's own. It was the spark. Within hours, Earth's hidden defense arrays opened fire. Kinetic slugs shredded the first alien destroyer. Nuclear-tipped missiles screamed from underground silos. The first Zarkath warship broke apart in low orbit, raining molten wreckage over the Pacific. Riker took command of the first fleet personally. His warship, Vengeance, launched from Luna's hidden shipyards. 50 human warships followed. Not sleek like the aliens, but brutal, overgunned, and built to kill. "They want a war?" Riker said to his crew as they prepared for the first strike. His eyes burned with cold fury. "We'll give them one they'll never forget." The battle for Earth orbit began that night. Human ships fought like mad dogs. They didn't have energy shields, so they layered armor 3 meters thick. They didn't rely on energy weapons. They fired tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. Zarkath cruisers shattered under the barrage. Human pilots rammed damaged ships into enemy carriers. Marines boarded alien vessels with shotguns and plasma torches. Riker's Vengeance spearheaded the assault. He sat in the command chair, every order sharp and precise. "Target their command ship." "Aye, Captain." Vengeance's main railgun fired. The slug punched through the alien flagship's bridge, leaving a gaping wound venting atmosphere and crew into space. For the first time, the Zarkath hesitated. This wasn't how their wars usually went. The prey wasn't supposed to fight back. The prey wasn't supposed to be this furious. But Aaron Riker wasn't fighting for territory. He wasn't fighting for diplomacy. He was fighting for every child burned on Europa, every family killed on Mars, every innocent man, woman, and child they'd slaughtered without remorse. And he would not stop. Not until the Imperium itself was ashes. The battle raged for hours. Space above Earth had become a graveyard, shattered hulls, drifting bodies, debris fields glowing red-hot from railgun impacts. Human ships, though outnumbered, fought like cornered wolves. No retreat, no surrender. In the heart of it, vengeance drove through the chaos. Aaron Riker stood tall on the command deck, face lit by flickering tactical displays. His eyes were sharp, but dark with something deeper. Cold rage. "Report," he barked. "5 enemy cruisers down. 3 more crippled. We've lost 6 frigates and 2 destroyers," replied his XO, Commander Briggs. "We hold orbit." "For now," Briggs said, voice low. "But they're bringing reinforcements. A second fleet is inbound from the outer system." Riker's jaw tightened. He knew it wouldn't end here. The Imperium wouldn't accept a standoff. They would escalate. Burn Earth if they had to. Fine, Riker thought. Let them come. He opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice echoed across every human ship. "This is Captain Riker. You've fought like legends. But this isn't over. They'll bring more. They think we'll break." A pause. Then, "We won't." Simple. No long speeches. His men didn't need them. They knew why they fought. They'd seen the burning colonies, the slaughtered civilians. That was enough. In deep space, the second Zarkoth fleet jumped into the outer system. Over 100 ships, heavy carriers, siege platforms, dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Their admiral, High Lord Vejakar, was already preparing bombardment trajectories for Earth. "We will glass their world," Vejakar hissed to his officers. "These primitive creatures dare defy us? They will watch their cities burn from orbit." But as they advanced toward Earth, something unexpected happened. Human forces didn't wait. Deep space listening posts picked up the fleet movements within minutes. Riker acted fast, too fast for the Zarkoth to adjust. "Deploy the hunters," he ordered. In the asteroid belt, hidden among rocks and debris, human stealth frigates powered up. They were small, fast, designed not for defense, but ambush. Dozens of them streaked toward the advancing alien fleet, hugging the thermal shadows of asteroids, running silent. In the silence of space, the first trap was sprung. A massive Zarkoth carrier, blood-thrown, led the vanguard. Its escort spread wide, but not wide enough. A swarm of human stealth frigates cut through their flanks, unleashing volleys of nuclear torpedoes. The first explosions bloomed like miniature stars. The Bloodthrone's shields failed under the barrage. Hull plates tore away, atmosphere vented in gouts of fire. Bridge crew screamed as the ship broke apart. Vejakar snarled in fury aboard his own dreadnought. Primitive apes, using such crude weapons, but effective, damnably so. He ordered the fleet to tighten formation. But it was too late to stop the momentum. Human forces, smaller but faster, harassed them at every turn, hit and fade, kill and vanish. Meanwhile, in Earth orbit, Riker prepared for the next phase. "They'll get through eventually," Briggs warned. "Too many of them." "Then we take the fight to them," Riker said. Briggs blinked. "You mean—" "I'm not waiting for them to burn Earth," Riker growled. "We hit their supply lines. We cripple their jump relays. Force them to fight on our terms." He issued the orders. Long-range assault groups detached from Earth orbit. Fast, hard-hitting ships, strike destroyers, raider cruisers, gunboats, jumped-out system. Their target, the Zarkoth fleet's forward logistics base at Saturn. As the human strike force jumped into Saturn's orbit, they found their prey. A massive alien fuel depot, defended by automated turrets and a skeleton crew of light escorts. Commodore Hale led the attack. "No quarter," he transmitted. "These bastards slaughtered civilians. They get nothing from us." The human warships dove in. Railguns tore through the fuel silos. Nuclear fireballs erupted, lighting Saturn's rings with crimson light. Alien defense ships scrambled to respond. Too late. The human strike force smashed through them, leaving wreckage tumbling into the gas giant's storms. Back on Earth, Riker watched the success reports come in. A grim smile touched his lips. "That'll slow them down." Briggs nodded. "But they'll be furious now." "Good," Riker said coldly. "Let them come blind with rage. That's when they make mistakes." But even as victories mounted, Earth's defenses were stretched thin. Losses were climbing. Too many ships damaged. Too many pilots dead. And the Zarkath, they weren't finished. Vejkar's battered fleet regrouped beyond the moon. Reinforcements from deeper Imperium space were weeks away. But he didn't plan to wait. He wanted Earth burned now, before the humans could gather more strength. "Launch the siege ships," he ordered. Massive alien platforms, armed with planetary bombardment weapons, advanced toward Earth orbit. If they reached firing position, cities would die. Millions. Riker watched them approach on the tactical display. No hesitation in his eyes, only grim resolve. "Prepare all remaining forces," he said. "We stop them here, no matter what it costs." Briggs swallowed. "If we lose this engagement, we won't." Riker's voice was steel. He opened another fleet-wide channel. "This is Riker. The enemy's making their push. You know what's at stake. You've seen what they do to helpless worlds." A pause. Then, with quiet fire, "We are not helpless. We are not prey. Today, we show them what it means to cross humanity." The final battle for Earth orbit began. Human ships surged to meet the alien siege platforms. Close-quarters combat in the debris-choked void. Point-blank railgun blasts, boarding actions, kamikaze strikes. Riker's vengeance led the charge. Its railguns punched through the first siege platform's core. A chain reaction tore the structure apart in a blinding explosion. But more platforms pressed on. Alien destroyers flanked the human lines, firing plasma lances that sliced through steel and flesh alike. Human ships fell, but they fought to the last. Crippled frigates rammed enemy vessels. Dying pilots triggered self-destructs in the heart of Zarkath formations. Inside Vengeance's bridge, alarms blared. A plasma bolt had scorched the portside hull. Fires raged in 2 compartments. "Damage control reports multiple breaches," Briggs shouted. "Keep firing," Riker ordered. "We hold this line." His crew obeyed, not because they feared him, but because they believed him. They'd followed him through hell already. They would follow him again. In the chaos, one Zarkath dreadnought, Nightpiercer, pushed toward firing range of Earth. Its main weapon charged, aimed at New York. If it fired, millions would die. Riker saw the threat instantly. His battered ship couldn't match it alone, but he didn't hesitate. "Helm," he ordered. "Full burn." Collision course. Briggs stared. "You mean to ram it?" "Yes." Riker's eyes were ice. "That ship does not fire." Vengeance surged forward, engines screaming. The crew braced for the final charge. The Zarkath dreadnought's captain saw the threat and opened fire. Plasma blasts tearing through Vengeance's hull. The human ship burned, bleeding atmosphere, but still it came. On the edge of death, Riker transmitted one last message, not to his crew, not to Earth, but directly to the Zarkath admiral. The channel opened. The alien's gloating visage appeared. Riker leaned forward, blood streaking his face, eyes blazing. "You wanted war?" he rasped. "Then face annihilation." And then Vengeance slammed into the Zarkath dreadnought. The resulting explosion lit the void like a new sun. Both ships vanished in a storm of fire and wreckage. The human fleet, seeing their captain's sacrifice, fought with renewed fury. One by one, the remaining siege platforms fell. The Zarkath fleet, leaderless and bloodied, began to retreat. Humanity had held the line. Barely. But they had held. On Earth, the battered survivors watched the burning wreckage drift across the sky. Captain Aaron Riker was gone. But his message remained, burned into every human heart. Humanity was no longer prey, and the war was far from over. The debris of the battle still drifted through Earth's orbit, a graveyard of steel and blood. Charred hull fragments tumbled silently past the shattered moonscape of Luna. The fires on Earth's surface had barely cooled, but the planet had survived. Barely. In the command bunker beneath New Washington, the surviving fleet captains gathered in grim silence. Many were bruised, bloodied, still wearing torn combat suits. They had come straight from the wreckage of their ships. No one sat in Riker's chair. It remained empty, black armband draped across its back. His sacrifice was known now, broadcast across Earth, carried in whispers through every remaining military channel. General Herrick, Earth Defense Commander, stood at the head of the table. An old soldier, broad-shouldered and sharp-eyed despite the fresh burn across his cheek. "The Zarkath fleet is broken for now," he said, "but we cannot mistake this for victory." A holographic display flickered to life, deep space intel feeds showing new enemy movements. "Reinforcements are en route. Zarkath High Command has declared a holy cleansing crusade. Entire sector fleets are mobilizing, hundreds of ships." A low murmur rippled through the room. "They won't stop until Earth is ashes," Herrick continued. "We have weeks, at best, before they arrive in force." Commodore Hale leaned forward. "We should evacuate key civilian populations. Go dark, fight a guerrilla war." "No," Herrick said. "We won't abandon Earth. Riker didn't die so we could run." At that, every man in the room straightened. None argued. Riker's name carried weight beyond any rank now. But the truth was grim. Earth's fleet was shattered. Out of 72 warships, only 19 remained operational, many damaged. Orbital defenses were crippled, ammunition stockpiles dangerously low. Herrick knew it. He'd fought too many wars to cling to false hope. He turned to the one man who might still turn the tide. "Commander Briggs." The XO of the late Vengeance looked up, eyes hollow from loss but steady. "You served under Riker. You know how he thought. If we're to survive, I need that mindset now." Briggs didn't hesitate. "We take the fight to them." A few officers stiffened. "With what ships?" one asked bitterly. Briggs spoke with iron certainty. "Not just ships, weapons." Riker had a contingency plan. Project Black Lance. A flicker of recognition passed through Herrick's eyes. "He told you?" Briggs nodded. "Before the final assault." The room fell silent. Project Black Lance was a classified initiative, one even many admirals barely knew about. Herrick gestured. "Explain." Briggs activated a secondary holo. A series of deep space facilities appeared. Secret research stations beyond Neptune, long considered abandoned. They aren't abandoned. Black Lance was Riker's brainchild, a program to develop first-strike weapons capable of crippling an empire. He keyed another display. Advanced torpedoes, experimental railguns, stealth warheads designed to bypass even Zarkath dreadnought shielding. If we can retrieve these assets, we can strike before their reinforcements arrive. "Strike where?" Commodore Hale asked. Briggs answered without hesitation. "The Zarkath homeworld." The room erupted. Shouts, objections, accusations of madness. "You're talking about attacking the heart of an empire." "They'll retaliate 1,000-fold. Suicidal." Briggs waited. Then, when the noise subsided, he spoke, voice cold and clear. "They already plan to annihilate Earth. What do we lose by striking first?" Silence. And then Herrick spoke. "He's right." Within hours, the Council had committed. The mission would proceed. But it would be no grand armada. Humanity had no such fleet left. This would be a knife in the dark. Preparations began immediately. Surviving ships were retrofitted for stealth runs. Ammunition stores were cannibalized. Elite strike teams selected. Briggs was given field command, promoted to captain, inheriting Riker's rank and mantle. He would lead the mission personally. In the hangar bays of the hidden Atlas station beneath the Pacific, Briggs stood before his chosen men. They were a rough lot, hardened veterans, scarred Marines, surviving naval crews. No uniforms here, only combat armor and weapons. "You all know why you're here," Briggs said, voice carrying across the chamber. "The Zarkath butchered our people. They think us broken. They think Earth is theirs for the taking." He looked each man in the eye. "They're wrong." A pause. "We strike at their heart. We send a message they can't ignore. Humanity does not kneel." The task force, codename Iron Fang, launched under full stealth. 5 ships, 2 frigates, 2 destroyers, and a single prototype stealth cruiser, Shadow Spear, carrying the Black Lance payloads. Briggs commanded from the Shadow Spear's bridge. The ship was sleek, black-hulled, bristling with experimental weapons. Beside him stood Lieutenant Vale, a former Marine captain turned Special Operations officer. Cold-eyed, ruthless, perfect for this mission. "Course set," Vale reported. "Zarkath Prime in 7 days at full burn." "Good." Briggs leaned forward. "No mistakes, no mercy." As the task force burned through the dark reaches of space, intelligence feeds streamed in. The Zarkath war machine was moving, entire sectors conscripted, millions of slaves pressed into service, warships massing at rally points. Humanity had drawn blood, and now the galaxy's most feared empire was preparing to drown them in fire. But they weren't ready for this. No one was. 7 days later, Iron Fang emerged from deep jump in the outskirts of the Zarkath home system. Before them lay Zarkath Prime, a bloated volcanic world orbited by massive shipyards, defense stations, and a sprawling capital complex. Billions lived and ruled there. Vale exhaled slowly. "Target in sight." Briggs's eyes were hard. "Arm the Black Lance." The weapon was monstrous, a multi-stage kinetic warhead capable of punching through planetary shields and crust alike. Designed not just to kill, but to send a message of annihilation. "Targeting?" Vale asked. Briggs didn't hesitate. "The Imperial Throne Complex. We cut off the snake's head." The Shadow Spear slipped through the outer defenses, evading patrols with silent engines and cloaked systems. Hours crawled past as the crew held their breath, every sensor on edge. Finally, firing position. "Target lock achieved," Vale whispered. Briggs stared at the holographic display, the heart of an empire beneath their sights. He remembered Riker's voice. "You want war, then face annihilation." And he gave the order. "Fire." The Black Lance launched. A spear of death streaked toward Zarkath Prime, accelerating to near-relativistic velocity. Automated defenses tried to intercept. Too slow. The warhead struck the throne complex at the planet's capital. A singularity of kinetic force slammed through shielding, through superstructure, through bedrock. In seconds, the entire capital city vanished, vaporized. A crater the size of a continent burned in its place. Secondary detonations rippled across the planet. Power grids failed, orbital stations panicked. Fleet command went dark. Zarkath Prime, the untouchable heart of the Imperium, burned. Aboard the Shadow Spear, Briggs watched in silence. Vale exhaled, eyes wide. "We did it." "No," Briggs said coldly. "We started it." Alarms blared. Zarkath defense fleets were mobilizing. Thousands of ships would soon flood the system. Briggs turned to his crew. "Jump protocols ready?" Vale nodded. "Coordinates set for fallback point." Briggs gave the final order. "Execute." Moments later, Iron Fang vanished into deep jump. leaving a shattered empire in its wake. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. Earth had struck first. Humanity had burned the heart of the Imperium. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Zarkath knew fear. But Briggs knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The real war was coming now, a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, and he would fight it, in Riker's name, in humanity's name. To the bitter end, the galaxy burned with new purpose. The Zarkath Imperium's heart had been pierced, its capital turned to a crater, its leadership decapitated. Billions dead. And the Imperium did not forgive. Across their sectors, a war of purity was declared. Every Zarkath fleet, every conscripted slave regiment, every war engine was set into motion. Their new objective was simple: the annihilation of humanity. In deep space, aboard the battered stealth cruiser Shadow Spear, Briggs stared at the intelligence feeds with cold eyes. The price of their strike had been high, but worth it. Riker would have done no less. Still, the odds were worse than grim. Vale entered the bridge, armor scuffed, eyes sharp. "We've received confirmation," he said. "Zarkath fleets massing in 3 sectors. Estimated deployment, over 500 warships. Multiple dreadnought groups." Briggs's jaw clenched. "Time to Sol?" 4 weeks, maybe less if they burn their engines hot. Briggs folded his arms. And Earth's defenses? Vale didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. Earth's battered fleet was racing to rebuild. Shipyards ran around the clock, refitting damaged vessels. New weapons, Black Lance derivatives, were being assembled in secret. But there wasn't enough time. Not nearly enough. Back on Earth, in the war rooms of Atlas Command, General Herrick reviewed the same grim projections. His senior staff looked exhausted, sleepless eyes, pale faces. But none had broken. They couldn't afford to. "We need more time," one admiral said. "We need allies." "Who?" Herrick snapped. "The Silthari sit behind their neutrality pacts. The Drekt are too busy watching their own borders. No one will stand against the Imperium." A grim silence. "No one but us," Herrick said. But not all hope was gone. The strike on Zarkath Prime had sown chaos across the Imperium's chain of command. Many governors refused to answer fleet orders. Sector warlords clawed for power. The Empire was bleeding, and for the first time in millennia, divided. If they could exploit that chaos, humanity might just survive. 3 days after the Iron Fang strike, Briggs and his task force returned to Earth space. The battered stealth ships slipped past debris-strewn orbital defenses and docked at Atlas Station. Briggs barely cleared decontamination before Herrick summoned him. In the high command chamber, Herrick faced him with a soldier's respect. "You did what many thought impossible," the general said. "You gave us a fighting chance." Briggs's voice was cold. "A chance is not victory. Number, but it's something." Herrick activated a star map, showing new Zarkath fleet deployments. "They're coming hard, but their flanks are exposed. Border sectors near the Drekt and the Orvath syndicates are in chaos. Warlords are carving each other up." Briggs's eyes narrowed. "Targets of opportunity." "Exactly." Herrick leaned closer. "We need to buy time. Weeks at least. I want you to lead deep raids into their fractured sectors, disrupt supply lines, force them to divert ships." A pause. "And if the opportunity arises, recruit allies, anyone desperate enough to stand with us." Briggs gave a sharp nod. "Understood." The mission was clear. Bleed the enemy. Within 2 days, a new strike group formed, codenamed Ghost Lance. 6 ships, fast, agile, brutal, veterans of the first battle, volunteers all. They launched under full stealth, charting a course straight into fractured Zarkath border space. The first target was the Gorath shipyards, a critical fuel and repair hub now contested by rival Zarkath warlords. Ghost Lance struck like a scalpel. Under cover of feuding warlord fleets, human saboteurs infiltrated the station. Explosives gutted the core reactors. The shipyards erupted in a chain of fire that lit the sector for hours. Fuel shortages rippled through 3 Zarkath fleets. Several were forced to delay their advance toward Seoul. But success bred danger. The Imperium's intelligence arm, the feared Karnathi Order, was tracking the human raids. Soon, a new threat emerged. Black Fang squadrons, elite Zarkath hunter-killers designed for one purpose: to eliminate human strike groups. Fast, stealth-capable, ruthless. In the cold dark near the Kalos Rift, Ghost Lance ran headlong into a Black Fang ambush. Alarms blared aboard the Shadow Spear. "Multiple contacts! Closing fast!" Vale shouted. "Battle stations!" Briggs ordered. The fight was brutal. Black Fang ships struck from all angles, plasma lances cutting deep into the Wraith, one of the human destroyers. Commander Halverson, the Wraith's captain, transmitted a final message. "Tell Briggs, we don't run." And he didn't. The Wraith rammed a Black Fang cruiser head-on, both ships annihilated in a nova of fire. Briggs's hands were fists on the armrest. His voice was steel. "We finish this." Shadowspear's railguns sang, tearing through 2 more enemy ships. Marines repelled a boarding attempt with brutal efficiency. After an hour of hellish combat, Ghost Lance emerged battered but alive. 3 ships lost, but the enemy driven off. In the aftermath, Briggs faced his surviving crew. "You fought like warriors," he said quietly. "But this was a warning. The enemy is adapting." He looked each man and woman in the eye. "They will come harder, faster. We must be sharper still." And they were. In the weeks that followed, Ghost Lance hit target after target. Communication relays, fuel depots, fleet staging points. Each raid forced the Zarkath High Command to divert more forces away from the Saul invasion. Briggs moved like a ghost through their sectors, always striking where least expected. The legend of the Shadow Spear grew, but the cost mounted. Each mission bled the strike group further. Fewer ships returned each time. Briggs buried too many good men in the cold dark. Vale said little, but the fire in his eyes only grew harder. He would see this war through, or die trying. Then, in the battered ruins of the Kalos Drift, Ghost Lance intercepted a transmission that would change the course of the war, a desperate plea from a Zarkath noble, Lord Koresh, leader of a splinter faction now hunted by the core Imperium. "We are not fools. The Empire is dying. I will not burn for the High Lord's arrogance. I offer an alliance, proof of good faith, fleet movement data, command codes, and access to deep space supply caches." It was a gamble. A trap? Possibly. But it was the first offer of cooperation humanity had seen. Briggs brought the transmission to General Herrick himself. "He's desperate," Briggs said, "but if he's telling the truth, this could cripple their invasion." Herrick considered, then nodded. "Proceed. But be careful." Thus began the most dangerous mission yet. Briggs and Vale would lead a covert envoy, deep into Zarkath space, to meet this rogue lord face to face. No backup, no guarantees. Only steel, will, and the raw drive to keep humanity alive. As they prepared to launch, Vale looked to Briggs. "We've been running on knives' edges for weeks. You think this will turn the tide?" Briggs's voice was cold steel. "We turn the tide one blade at a time, and if this alliance gives us even one more chance to bleed them, we take it." And so they launched towards the heart of an empire in flames. The war was far from over. The worst was yet to come. But humanity had not broken, and Briggs would make damn sure it never would. The jump felt longer this time. Briggs sat in the command chair of the Shadow Spear, arms crossed, face carved from stone. He barely moved as the ship slid through the black currents of hyperspace. Every moment pulled them deeper into Zarkath territory, alone, outnumbered, hunted. Across from him, Vale adjusted his gauntlets and checked the charge on his rifle for the 10th time. He caught Briggs's eye and gave a grim nod. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Everyone aboard knew the risks. No backup, no rescue. If the Zarkath Lord's message was a trap, they would die far from home. But if it wasn't, if they could turn even one of the Imperium's splinter factions, then Earth might just survive what was coming. The rendezvous point was a rogue planet, a drifting giant, lightless and cold, hidden in the void between systems. An old pirate haven, the perfect place for betrayal or desperate alliances. Shadowspear dropped from hyperspace in the black. Only the faint pulse of distant quasars lit the view. Briggs stood behind the helm officer. Anything? Contact. One ship. No escorts. Broadcasting the correct handshake code. Vale exhaled. Either brave or stupid. Briggs's eyes narrowed. Or desperate. The enemy ship, a sleek Zarkath frigate of older design, approached at cautious speed. No weapons powered, no shields active. Briggs gave the order. Hold position. Ready countermeasures. But keep weapons cold. On the main screen, a figure appeared as the Zarkath transmission opened. Tall, lean, scaled skin the color of tarnished bronze. Heavy ceremonial armor, eyes sharp with calculation. Lord Koresh. He spoke in guttural basic, voice thick but clear. I am Koresh. I come in truth. Not all of us bow to mad gods. Briggs didn't waste words. Prove it. Koresh inclined his head. Dock with my ship. I will show you. Vale grunted. Now that's a trap waiting to happen. Briggs's voice was ice. We go. Minutes later, Briggs and Vale led a 6-man team across the docking bridge. No fanfare, full combat armor, weapons live. On the Zarkath frigate, they found Koresh waiting alone. No guards, no weapons drawn. Brave, Vale muttered under his breath. Or suicidal, Briggs thought. Koresh gestured them into a war room, Spartan, scarred by battle. The noble looked older, up close, weary, haunted. Once seated, he didn't posture or boast. Instead, he keyed a console. Hollow feeds filled the air. Fleet deployments, command codes, schematics of Zarkath dreadnoughts and planetary defenses. Proof, Koresh said simply. I bring knowledge. In return, I want asylum for my people. Briggs studied the data with a cold stare. It was real. Vital. But trust came harder. You're betraying your empire, Briggs said flatly. Why? Koresh's eyes burned. Because it is no longer an empire. It is a rabid beast. The High Lords die and the priests scream for endless war. They will bleed the galaxy dry and rule only over ash. I will not see my line end in such madness. Vale's voice was a low growl. You expect us to believe that's your only reason? Koresh met his gaze without flinching. I expect you to believe this. If Earth falls, the next wars will consume all. The syndicates, the Drekt, even the cowardly Silthari. No one will escape. Briggs leaned forward. What do you want beyond asylum? Koresh's answer was simple. A seat at the table. When the Imperium falls, I will not be its corpse. I will be its future. A pause hung thick in the air. Then Briggs nodded once. Deal. The alliance was struck, not with ceremony, not with oaths, but with hard eyes and harder terms. In exchange for asylum for his faction, Koresh provided a full download of current Zarkath fleet positions, command hierarchies, and hyperlane disruptions caused by the Imperial collapse. More valuable still, he revealed a coming opportunity. The Imperium's main war fleet, over 200 ships, would soon transit through the Krytos Expanse, a narrow corridor of navigable space. If Ghost Lance could strike there, cripple the fleet's logistics, it would buy Earth critical time. Maybe even force a full withdrawal. Briggs returned to Shadowspear with the intel in hand. His mind was already moving 10 steps ahead. Vale followed, voice grim. "You trust that lizard?" "No," Briggs said, "but I trust the data." He opened a fleet channel. "All hands, prepare for immediate redeployment. New target. Krytos Expanse." 3 days later, Ghostlance emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Expanse. The sector was a narrow gulf of gas clouds and gravitational shears. Perfect terrain for an ambush. Briggs stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the swirling void ahead. Vale joined him. "Latest scout data confirms it. Zarkoth main fleet transits in 12 hours. Supply ships in the vanguard." Briggs's mouth set in a hard line. "Then we hit the vanguard. No mercy, no prisoners." The hours crawled. The crew prepared in silence. Every man aboard knew the stakes. This strike could decide the fate of Earth. As the enemy fleet began its approach, Ghostlance moved into position, hidden in dense magnetic shears, shields cold, weapons primed. Through the viewports, titanic shapes drifted into sight. Zarkoth dreadnoughts, carriers, fuel barges, supply haulers. Vale's voice was low. "Target-rich environment." Briggs's order was colder still. "Kill them all." The ambush was perfect. Railguns ripped through the first wave of supply ships. Nuclear warheads turned armored fuel tankers into expanding suns. Chaos tore through the Zarkoth fleet. Shadowspear danced through the carnage, firing relentlessly. Marines launched boarding pods into crippled enemy ships, planting charges and cutting down resistance. But the enemy adapted fast. Black Fang squadrons counterattacked with vicious precision. One by one, Ghost Lance ships fell. The destroyer Revenant was gutted by a plasma lance. The frigate Howl was lost with all hands after a reactor breach. On Shadowspear's bridge, alarms screamed. Vale reported, "Shields failing! Multiple hull breaches!" Briggs's voice was steel. "We finished the mission." In a final strike run, Shadowspear crippled 3 more enemy supply barges, then veered hard, skimming the edge of a collapsing gravity shear. Explosions filled the expanse. Fires raged in the void. The Zarkoth fleet's advance was broken, its supply line shattered. Bruised and bleeding, Shadowspear fled into the dark. Of Ghost Lance, only 2 ships remained, but the mission was a success. The Zarkoth fleet would be delayed by weeks, perhaps longer. Earth would live to fight another day. In the aftermath, as emergency crews tended to the wounded, Vale sat beside Briggs in the shattered command deck. "Hell of a fight," Vale muttered. Briggs nodded, voice low. "And just the beginning." For now, humanity had bought time. But the war was far from over, and Briggs knew the next battles would be the bloodiest yet. Shadowspear limped back into Earth space, trailing smoke and debris. The once pristine stealth cruiser now bore the scars of countless battles, hull plating scorched, weapons damaged, crew exhausted. But it was alive. They were alive. In the war room beneath Atlas Command, the surviving officers gathered around Briggs and General Herrick as the latest intelligence fed in. "Your strike bought us precious time," Herrick said. "Fleet repairs are accelerating. Black Lance warheads are coming online." But his tone remained grim. "We've delayed them, not stopped them. Their main fleet is still massing. And now," he tapped a control, "we have new reports." A star map bloomed in the air, red markers flashing across Zarkath sectors. Multiple Zarkath slave worlds are being purged. Vale scowled. Why? To consolidate their forces, Herrick said darkly. To remove any who might rebel. They're killing their own slaves by the billions. Briggs's jaw tightened, and driving those with nothing left straight into our arms. Later, in private, Herrick laid out the rest. There's a refugee fleet, thousands of ships, drifting in the Orvath expanse. Former Zarkath slaves. They're leaderless, desperate. If we don't move fast, they'll be picked off or driven into Zarkath hands. Briggs understood immediately. Potential allies. Herrick nodded. And a moral obligation. We can't leave them to be slaughtered. Thus, another mission was born. Shadow Spear, refitted hastily, would lead a convoy of humanitarian and military ships to reach the refugees first, secure them, recruit those who would fight, save those who could not. Simple in theory, deadly in practice, because Zarkath hunting fleets were already en route. As the task force launched, Vale leaned against the bulkhead beside Briggs in the cramped war room. "Never thought we'd be playing rescue ops," he muttered. Briggs's reply was low and hard. "Every soul we save is one less for them. Every fighter we gain is one more blade in their gut." Vale's grin was grim. Now that sounds more like it. The journey to the Orvath expanse took 5 tense days. Throughout, scattered transmissions painted a grim picture. Refugee ships adrift, hunted, burned. When Shadowspear finally reached the expanse, the sight ahead was staggering. Thousands of civilian vessels drifted through the swirling nebula. Freighters, mining ships, broken transports. No weapons, no protection. Vale scanned the feed. "Christ, it's a slaughterhouse waiting to happen." Briggs's voice cut through. "Not while we breathe." They hailed the refugee fleet. An answer came. A fractured, desperate voice, speaking rough basic. "You are human? Is this Trick?" Briggs keyed the response himself. "This is Captain Briggs of the Human Defense Fleet. We are here to help. We will protect you." A long silence. Then, We believe. We pray." The task force moved fast, forming a defensive perimeter, coordinating with surviving refugee leaders. Many ships were beyond saving, powerless, out of life support. But thousands still clung to hope. Among them, to Briggs's surprise, were hardened survivors, former Zarkath shock troops, freed slaves who had tasted battle. Leaders emerged, a grim Orvath war priest named Garn, a former Drekt raider Corvin, and others. When Briggs met with them aboard Shadowspear, he spoke without pretense. "You want freedom? You fight for it. Stand with us. Stand for yourselves." Garn's eyes burned. "We fight. For vengeance. For the dead." As the refugee fleet began to organize, the first enemy scouts arrived. Zarkath warships, fast raiders probing for weakness. Briggs gave the order without hesitation. "Intercept, no quarter." The battle was swift and brutal. Shadowspear and the human escorts hit first, crippling the lead Zarkath ship with pinpoint railgun fire. Then Garn's fighters joined, jury-rigged assault craft crewed by vengeful slaves. They fought with savage fury, ramming, boarding, tearing through the enemy in desperate rage. Within hours, the raiders were dead or fleeing. Vale watched the wreckage drift past. "Hell of a fight. Those refugees aren't helpless anymore." Briggs's voice was steel. "They'll need to be ready. The main fleet's coming." And it was. Scouts confirmed it. A full Zarkath hunter group, 20 warships, closing on the expanse. The refugee fleet couldn't outrun them. They would have to fight. Briggs knew what that meant. "This will be a holding action," he told Herrick via secure communication. "We'll bleed them here. Buy time for Earth and the Alliance." Herrick's reply was grim, Understood. You know what's at stake. In preparation, the human and refugee crews worked tirelessly. Garn's warriors jury-rigged weapons onto freighters. Human tech teams upgraded shields. Old grudges faded as men and aliens prepared to die together. Vale summed it up best. They're one bad day from collapse, but right now, they're ours. Then the enemy arrived. The void lit with the cold fires of the Zarkath fleet, crimson and gold, ships bristling with plasma lances. Shadowspear led the human line. Garn's assault craft flanked them. Briggs stood on the bridge, gaze like ice. This is it. No retreat. We hold this line. Vale grinned savagely. Wouldn't have it any other way. The first volleys screamed through the expanse. Plasma blasts tore through drifting wreckage. Refugee ships ducked behind makeshift shields. Then Shadowspear opened fire. Railgun slugs punched through a Zarkath frigate, tearing it in two. Garn's warriors surged in, boarding pods slamming into another enemy cruiser. Across the expanse, chaos reigned. The human refugee alliance fought like demons. But the enemy was relentless. One by one, human escorts fell. Refugee craft burned. On Shadowspear's bridge, damage reports piled up. Vale wiped blood from a gash on his temple. We can't hold forever. Briggs's voice was calm, cold. We hold long enough. Then, from the darkness, an unexpected signal. Multiple new contacts, Zarkath signatures, but not hostile. Koresh had arrived. His faction, splintered Zarkath warships loyal only to him, swooped in, guns blazing. They hit the hunter group's rear flank, sowing chaos. Garn's warriors howled with savage joy. The tide turned. In the end, the Zarkath fleet broke. What remained fled into the void. The expanse, for now, was safe. In the aftermath, Briggs met with Koresh face to face. You came, Briggs said simply. Koresh's reply was grim. My word is my blade. The war is not over, but today, we fight together. Back aboard Shadowspear, Vale leaned against the bulkhead, exhaustion in every line of his body. Hell of a day. Briggs gave a rare, grim smile. And more to come. The refugee fleet was safe. Many new allies had been forged. But Briggs knew. The main Zarkath invasion was still coming. Earth would face its greatest trial yet. And Briggs would meet it head-on. 2 weeks later, the blackness of space outside Earth's orbit looked deceptively calm. But those who knew better saw the signs, the distant glints of scout drones, the strange gravitational eddies as foreign ships jumped between shadow lanes, probing the edges of the system. The invasion was coming. General Herrick stood in the reinforced observation deck of Atlas Command, hands clasped behind his back. The scars on his face were fresh now, a relic of the last orbital battle, and his uniform hung heavier from the sleepless weeks that had followed. When Briggs entered the room, battle-worn and cold-eyed as ever, Herrick didn't turn. They're on the move, Herrick said quietly. Main Zarkath fleet, almost 300 ships now. Briggs stood beside him, gaze hard on the star field. ETA? 5 days. Maybe 4 if they push. A long pause. And us? Briggs asked. Herrick finally turned, tired but grimly determined. We've rebuilt 46 ships. Black Lance warheads loaded on 20 of them. Koresh's forces have committed 30 ships. Garn's warriors are spread across our flanks. Briggs gave a slight nod. It wasn't enough. Not against the sheer mass of the Zarkath war machine. But it would have to be. Later, in the War Council chamber, the final plans were drawn. It wasn't a conventional strategy. They didn't have the numbers for that. Briggs laid it out. We bleed them in waves, harass, ambush, force them into fragmented battle groups. He gestured at key points on the system map. We make them fight for every inch of space, and when they overcommit. Vale finished the thought. We shove a black lance down their throat. The next days were a storm of preparation. Shadowspear was refitted yet again, patched together by miracle-working engineers and driven crews. The scars of past battles remained visible, but the ship still moved like a predator. Vale stood with Briggs in the lower armory, checking over weapons and armor with mechanical precision. "You think we can hold this time?" Vale asked quietly. Briggs strapped on his sidearm. His voice was cold iron. "We hold, or we burn with the enemy." Then the call came. Enemy fleet emerging from hyperspace. Multiple vectors. Dreadnought groups leading. The war for Earth had begun. Across orbit and beyond, human and allied forces scrambled to position. Stealth mines armed, ambush points prepared. Koresh's ships took the outer ring, Garn's warbands stationed in high-orbit kill zones. Shadowspear led the strike flotilla, a blade poised to cut deep when the time came. On the bridge, Briggs watched the enemy fleet materialize, colossal dreadnoughts, swarms of cruisers, clouds of fighters. Vale's eyes were sharp. Bigger than we thought. Briggs's gaze didn't waver. "Then we kill more of them." The first clashes erupted in the outer system. Koresh's ships struck fast and hard, then withdrew, bleeding the Zarkoth vanguard. Next came the minefields, stealth explosives detonating inside cruiser formations, sowing confusion and fire. But the enemy kept coming, relentless, unstoppable. At the inner defense line, the final stand began. Shadowspear and her flotilla engaged at point-blank range, railguns screaming. Black Lance warheads fired, devastating dreadnoughts in bursts of white-hot fury. Garn's warbands boarded crippled Zarkoth ships in brutal close combat, tearing through enemy crews with blades and fire. The battle raged for hours, space filled with wreckage and flame. On Shadowspear's bridge, alarms blared constantly. Shields flickered. Hull breaches opened and sealed. Vale wiped blood from his brow. "We're losing ships too fast." Briggs's jaw was tight. "Keep the pressure on. The more we kill here, the fewer reach Earth." But then the worst came. The enemy flagship, a super dreadnought unlike any seen before, entered orbit range. Massive beyond scale, hull plated in unknown alloys, weapons banks glowing with unnatural energy. Briggs stared at it. "That thing hits Earth. It's over." He made the call. "All remaining ships, target the flagship. Full assault." Shadowspear dove into the maelstrom, leading the charge. Railguns pounded the beast's hull. Black Lance warheads struck, but the monster kept coming, shields regenerating at impossible rates. Then, a transmission. A face appeared on the enemy flagship's comm feed. A Zarkoth High Lord, twisted, half mad. His voice echoed across all channels. "Human worms, you delay nothing. Your world dies today." Briggs answered with fire. "All guns, burn that bastard down!" But the flagship's main cannon charged, a weapon capable of glassing continents. Time was running out. Vale looked at Briggs. "We won't stop it in time." Briggs's face was stone. "Then we stop it the old way." He opened a private channel to Koresh. "Your fastest ships. I need a breach." Koresh didn't hesitate. For Earth. Moments later, Zarkoth allied ships rammed the flagship's flanks, forcing a breach in its hull. Briggs and a small strike team, including Vale, Garn, and elite Marines, boarded through the breach. Inside, the battle became brutal and personal. Corridors ran with blood. Zarkoth defenders fought with feral desperation. Vale gunned down 3 with ruthless efficiency. Garn split another in half with a war axe. Briggs led from the front, every shot, every blade stroke fueled by sheer will. Their target, the cannon's reactor core. They fought deck by deck, losing men with each step. Finally, battered and bleeding, they reached the core chamber. Booby-trapped, guarded by elite warriors. No time for finesse. Briggs led the final charge. The battle was a blur of fire and steel. When it was done, only a handful still stood. Vale slumped against a console, blood pouring from a leg wound. Briggs, face streaked with ash, moved to the core's controls. "Detonate," Vale rasped. Briggs's voice was cold. "We end it." He armed the overload. A 10-minute countdown began. They ran, dragging wounded, fighting every step back to the breach point. Extraction was chaos. As Shadowspear swooped in for pickup, the enemy flagship began to shudder. Briggs and the survivors barely made it aboard as the countdown hit 0. Moments later, the super dreadnought exploded, an artificial sun blooming in orbit. On Earth, cheers erupted. Across the surviving fleet, battered crews raised fists in defiance. The Zarkath fleet broke. Leaderless, burning, they fled the system. Earth had survived. In the silence that followed, aboard Shadowspear's battered bridge, Vale leaned back, exhausted beyond words. Briggs stood at the viewport, watching the stars. "We did it," Vale said quietly. Briggs didn't smile. "It's not over," he said. "Not until the Imperium is ash." And in the depths of the galaxy, the next storm was already brewing. The stars had never looked so empty. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth's orbit was a graveyard of twisted metal and drifting wreckage. Hundreds of ships, human, Zarkath, and allied alike, now floated lifeless in the black. Fires still burned in the upper atmosphere, but Earth lived. Barely. Inside Atlas Command, the mood was equal parts exhaustion and grim triumph. Medics rushed through halls crowded with wounded. Engineers crawled over damaged consoles and exposed bulkheads. And in the war room, a new council gathered. Briggs, General Herrick, Vale, Koresh, Garn, and a handful of battered commanders who'd survived the slaughter. No one sat. No one relaxed. The war was not over. Herrick began. "The enemy is broken, for now. The High Lord we killed was their strongest remaining leader. The fleet that fled this system will not return soon." Koresh nodded, his scaled face grim. "Their lines fracture further each day. Warlords fight warlords. Whole sectors rebel. The Imperium's core rots from within." Vale leaned against a console, bandaged and limping. "Now's the time to finish it." Briggs's gaze was steel. "We finish it. For Riker. For the dead. For Earth." The plan was bold to the point of madness. A full, deep strike into the heart of the crumbling Imperium. No more defense. No more waiting. Take the fight to them. Target, Zarkath Prime. Again. The planet had survived the first Black Lance strike, but it was in chaos, shielding crippled fleet command scattered. The chance to end the war was now. Briggs would lead the spearhead. A combined fleet, 20 human warships, 10 of Koresh's loyalists, and an armada of Garn's fighters. Vale stood beside him as the preparations began. "We might not come back from this one," Vale said, matter of fact. Briggs looked him dead in the eye. "Didn't come this far to stop now." Shadowspear, repaired as best as possible, would again lead the charge. She was no longer sleek. Her hull bore the scars of every battle fought since the first days of the war. But she was still deadly. And Briggs was still her captain. 3 days later, the fleet launched. The jump to Zarkath Prime was long and dangerous. Koresh's agents had mapped the safest shadow lanes, but no one expected a clean entry. They were right. The moment the fleet emerged, alarms screamed. Multiple enemy factions were already battling in orbit over Zarkath Prime, a civil war in full swing. But one remaining loyalist fleet remained, 70 ships under a surviving High Priest Admiral. Vale's voice was grim. "Hell of a welcome party." Briggs's reply was colder still. "We burn them all." The battle erupted in an instant. Human and allied ships dove straight into the melee, exploiting gaps, turning faction against faction. Shadowspear led a decapitation strike, railguns and missiles tearing into enemy command ships. Garn's fighters hunted down enemy bombers with savage precision. Koresh's warships turned on their own kin without hesitation, vengeance and survival fueling every shot. But the enemy flagship, a surviving High Lord's Will dreadnought, anchored the Loyalist defense. Its shields withstood even the heaviest barrage. Its plasma lances gutted 3 human destroyers. If it wasn't destroyed, the entire assault would fail. Briggs made the call. "All ships, focus fire, Shadowspear on breach run." Vale wiped blood from his face. "You're serious?" Briggs's voice was iron. "Deadly." Shadowspear charged headlong at the dreadnought. Shields flickered. Hull groaned. Return fire ripped through the void, but Briggs never wavered. "Helm, 50 meters off their ventral exhausts. Gunnery, target the shield cores." At point-blank range, Shadowspear unleashed her final Black Lance warhead. The impact was cataclysmic. The High Lord's Will cracked open, internal detonations chain-reacting through its core. The dreadnought exploded in a blaze of light that turned night into day on Zarkath Prime below. With their flagship gone, the remaining Loyalist forces scattered. Briggs's voice echoed across the fleet. "Prepare ground assault. We end this on the surface." Zarkath Prime was a shattered world. The capital, already scarred by the first strike, now burned with civil war. Briggs led the assault team personally, Vale at his side, along with Garn's elite warriors and a corps of human marines. Their objective? The Throne Bastion. The last seat of Zarkath religious and political power. If they took it, the Imperium would fall for good. The landing was brutal. Anti-orbital batteries still clawed at the sky. Dropships dodged flak and plasma. When Briggs's team hit the ground, the air was thick with smoke and blood. Urban warfare, room by room, street by street. Vale fired until his weapon overheated, switching to blade when the corridors grew too tight. Garn fought like a berserker, his war cry echoing through the burning ruins. Briggs moved with deadly precision, every step driving toward the bastion's core. Finally, after hours of grinding combat, they breached the inner sanctum. A final defense waited, fanatical priests and last-stand guards. Briggs didn't hesitate. He led the final charge, cutting them down with ruthless efficiency. At the heart of the bastion, they found the last surviving high priest, a withered thing, draped in bloodied robes. His voice trembled with hate. "You will not unmake us." Briggs's gun spoke first. One shot. Clean. The priest crumpled. Silence fell. Then Vale, coughing through the smoke, looked at Briggs. "That it?" Briggs holstered his weapon. "It is now." Outside, the battered fleet cheered. Across Zarkath Prime, the last Loyalist forces surrendered or fled. The Imperium, once the galaxy's unchallenged master, was dead. 2 weeks later, back on Earth, a battered but victorious fleet returned. In a solemn ceremony at Atlas Command, Briggs stood before the gathered soldiers, marines, and allies. No grand speech, just truth. We stood when others ran. We fought when the stars burned. And today, we remember the fallen. The war was won, but for Briggs, Vale, and those who survived, peace would always feel temporary. Because in the black beyond the stars, there was always another enemy, and humanity would be ready for Riker, for Earth, for the fallen.